Hey guys, so today we're going to be looking at patch 8.8. It literally just dropped today. There are a bunch of changes now that you need to get caught up to speed on, which we're going to do today. Look at those very quickly, roll by roll, and the timestamps for those rolls will be down in the description. Riot have also said that this is on the lighter side of changes, so not as many because we're going to be getting some big mid-season ones coming up pretty soon. What do you think those are going to be though? Like, what are the big changes that they could bring out for the mid-season patches? Just to let you know, before we start as well, I'm doing a $500 RP giveaway with a bunch of other YouTube friends. You can enter just by being a sub, whatever. It is super easy. Link is down below to go and get entered. By the way, that new open spellbook keystone, that's been changed back to unsealed spellbook, so it won't be in this patch, sadly. Maybe it'll come back a little bit soon though. Maybe that is one of the big mid-season changes. Before we get into the major changes, also, sweeping lens, the red trinket, is now actually being removed from the game. You can buy oracles from level 1 instead if you want to. Let's jump into our first role, which is going to be AD carry. We're actually going to start by looking at lethal tempo buffs, and I know this is the AD section, but it could obviously be for a lot of different champions, right? Like Master Yi or Aatrox, loads of different things. The attack speed that you get from this is going to go up, so it's actually much better. It's because it starts higher and also ends higher that it should be so good. Like something like a level 11 actually, so when teamfights really start, like mid-game, you're already at 85% or thereabouts. So when it actually starts to matter, like in the middle of the game when you start to fight people, you've already got more attack speed than you would have had at level 18 before the change. Lethal tempo isn't actually complete like turd level either, maybe 1 or 2% lower win rate than a fleet footwork on some champions that can actually use it, so I think this could work now a lot more. We're gonna see more and more Kai'Sa nerfs coming in now. This is just a start. Health regen down, growth down, and your Q scales worse than with AD than before. So what they seemed to do before was kind of like over buff her a little bit so people could play her, and then as everyone learns her, the right build, gets way better at her, they can make her weaker as a champion and still be decent, if that makes sense. The main thing that you have to know about these changes are that her rockets are going to be using less of her AD, about 20% less for 12 rockets after the upgrade. If the rockets are split, it's not a massive deal, but if they all hit the same target, that is a fair amount less, and most builds honestly are building more attack speed focus at the moment anyway after their stance, so it's not the end of the world. Xayah is another one. I'm not gonna lie, taking 1 health off her regen 2 AD away from her base is probably not going to change that much. They say that she is able to coast through hard matchups and get to her mid game a little bit too easily, so that is why they're nerfing her, but I don't think this really stops that. The biggest AD carry change apart from lethal tempo is to Varus though. His W has been reworked. The on-hit damage has been lowered on it, but it actually has an active on top of this now, which makes your next Q deal bonus damage, and also his passive is now going to give a little bit less attack speed when he gets a kill. What you really have to know, I guess, about this is that if he uses the W active, it will make his bow glow a little bit more, and the next time he uses his Q, it will do a lot more damage, especially if you're low health. So basically, you can dodge it, you can flash it, whatever, and you should be perfectly fine. It's just basically like the old Varus. He should actually be a lot stronger though in this patch specifically. Maybe we'll see nerfs in future, I'm not sure, but you can fully charge it for crazy damage, but if you just insta pop your Q, it still does a really good amount of base damage there as well. The big thing here is that it has a very long cooldown, so if he uses it and he wastes it, that is then a good time to fight him where he can't do as much damage. It does also do percentage missing health damage though, so you'll need to use it on people below half health to do some good damage. So what you need to know for an AD carry really is Kai'Sa and Xayah will be slightly weaker this patch. Varus can do a bit more damage with his Q when he activates his W, but it has a very long cooldown. Lethal tempo is also not a troll pick keystone anymore, and it should be a lot better on a lot of different champions. So let's move into our mid lane then, and this is probably the role getting the most changes. We're getting 2 kind of reworks, 1 Reaver, and we're also getting a bunch of other nerfs. So Archangels is going to kick us off. The mana to AP conversion is down to 1% from 3%. It is actually going back to 3% when it upgrades into Seraphs. So this is bad, like real bad for mid laners who want to rush Archangels, but once it transforms, you'll spike back up in power again, and it won't be like any different. So most likely what we're going to see now is getting a tier to stack it, then moving into buying something else completely, like Luden's Echo, for example, for the mana bag and the cooldown reduction, and then Archangels after. There really is not that much point building it that early into the game anymore as your first item, unless you really just want the Lost Chapter passive or the cooldown reduction. It is a pretty smart way to nerf the item, taking power away early, but making it just as good mid to late game, where the percentage conversion should mean a little bit more anyway, where you really want that. Taliyah is one of those champions, though, who rushes Archangels every game, so she can spam and spam and spam her abilities, right? So one that is going to hit her anyway, she might have to go Tyr, Morello, Archangels, or maybe she just has to stick with Archangels because she needs the mana and cooldown reduction, but she'll be weaker. Either way, she'll also start with 30 less health now in this patch, and her Q cooldown will be up 2 seconds rank 1. By the way, Doran's ring only gives 60 health, so 30 less level 1 is a fair amount to lose already. Basically, there are two things with this nerf. Wave clear is going to be worse. You cannot spam her Q as much, you cannot push as hard, and she's going to be easier to kill. Another one very similar actually is Rise. Again, looking at wave clear, making it worse so that he can get punished a little bit easier and isn't as dominant, I guess. Add in the Archangel's nerfs, which will hurt him a little bit, and he should be a fair bit weaker. We might as well, like, honestly just rework him again, to be honest. If they're going to keep nerfing him over and over, like, why not just get it out of the way and we can learn the new Rise? Azir is another one. His soldier damage to non-primary targets, so not the first target, wave clear basically is going to be reduced. We're seeing a little bit of a trend here, right? For wave clear in this patch, going to be doing like 15% less until level 6, 20% less until level 11, 25% less until level 16, and back to normal after that. It's not really like taking their fighting power away, at least with all of these nerfs, which is a good thing. It's just taking how safe they are, how much they can push and wander off and not really have to bother laning at all. Speaking of one that is going to get in your face, we're going to look at the Leblanc rework now. Her passive, her Q, and her ultimate are back to how they were before, and we have balance tweaks to the rest of her kit. So her passive is mirror image again. Get her low, she will go invisible for a second, creates a clone of herself that deals no damage but lasts for 8 seconds. Her Q is going to apply a mark to the target. Any other ability will trigger the mark and deal extra damage, and her ultimate will again mimic the last spell you cast and cast it again. The only other major thing that you kind of have to know about this is her W does basically double damage now, and that's mostly because it's her only way of hitting more than one thing, so her wave clear. She is definitely going to be a single target beast again. She might need some tuning either to make her weaker or stronger. We'll see where she lands, but it's much more about the burst and blowing people up again. They've kind of shifted her away from fancy stuff in her kit to just really good single target damage. More than anything, that damage comes from her mark system. You can dodge it, you can try and outplay it, whatever it is, but you should really expect her to W forward, QU, press R to fire another Q, and then E to finish. The other rework we're going to look at today is one to Ahri. She is going to be more single target focused. Her W and her E are going to be better for single target burst. Move speed has been moved into a passive, and healing moved into a Q. When you're playing against her, the number one thing you have to do right now is dodge the charm. It now has a 20% damage amp back on it, and yes, she is more deadly, but only if that lands. Her W will also actually prioritize whoever she has hit with a charm or she has last auto attack, so fighting your minions will be a little bit easier for her again. Apart from that, is basically the same as before already. It's kind of a mini rework. She only gets move speed when she hits an enemy champion though with 2 spells in 1.5 seconds, so she can't really like get back to lane faster or anything, and the only other difference is her heal needs her to hit 9 things with spells, and then she gets a stack and her next Q is going to heal her. As I said though, if you dodge her charm, it's going to be okay. I'm not sure having that one-dimensional thing where there's just one thing you need to outplay her is actually a good thing or a bad thing. If you don't dodge it though, her damage is a lot higher, and she will be able to use the lead if she gets one, which is kind of the point. So the main stuff you have to know is mid laner, Archangels is going to be weaker until you get into Seraphs. Now Talia, Azir, and Rise cannot push as well. Leblanc is going to be back to how she used to be, and Ahri is now way more focused on actually hitting that charm and blowing people up after that. So a couple of changes for the jungle then. Graves, his ultimate cooldown has been lowered 10 to 20 seconds depending on rank. I've seen a few more Graves played recently, and they don't actually do that bad though. So maybe he is just pretty underrated, and this is kind of like Riot's way to nudge you to play him again. Vi's a few more like major changes. So base armor is going to be lowered, but armor per level is going to go up. Her health regen is up, her passive and her Q cooldowns are a lot better in rank 1, and lastly her E mana cost is down. These are a bit random, but the main things here are that 1, Riot actually wants Vi to be a top laner as well as a jungler. I did not know this, but they made the champion to be a top laner and we stuck her in the jungle. When you understand that, it makes a bit more sense, right? Bringing her cooldowns down mean that you can fight more in the lane phase, but you could also farm faster, so it's a buff to both. In theory, if you can farm faster, then you could gank more, and if you can take less damage like from your passive buff, then you can also gank more as well. So for the top lane then, we actually have some Irelia tweaks. 2 week early apparently, so they are buffing her base armor. Her Q will deal 10% more damage to minions, but her ultimate will do less damage and have a longer cooldown. Their aim is to make it so you can do a little bit more early game, less chance of you getting like destroyed, but when you get to the late game, you will not be as face roll just by pressing R. To be fair, it is something I've kind of noticed, right? Like maybe it's because she's new though, but a lot of Irelias seem to get boned early, but then do a lot of damage still later into the game. For Nautilus, we're looking at just a few buffs to start him off, with more coming later most likely apparently, but helping him to engage a bit more with the lower cooldown on Q, and by buffing his mana and AD, they make him better in every role, top jungle and support. Another tank they're looking at is Sion, and And to be fair, it's quite a lot off his Q damage. Actually, if you fully charge it rank 1, you're now losing 60% of your total AD ratio and damage. Because this is actually based on rank though as well, if you want to max your E for poke, they are saying that you'll have to accept your all-in damage from Q is going to be a lot less. If you don't want that though, you can actually max your Q instead, and then you'll still be doing the same as you were before. Finally, then we can move into support. There aren't that many changes, but Braum is going to have a little bit less armor per level. His W won't give as much armor and magic resist either. This is actually quite a lot of his W. That's the main thing. Getting 17 armor for free for him and his ally in a trade makes them a lot harder to kill, and most people don't even realize. Now that is almost half, well, down to 10 rank 1, so not really, but kind of. So both Braum and his AD should be a lot easier to kill now. Speaking of difficult to kill, we have Tarm. Like, takes pretty much the longest time for a support to actually die, except maybe Alistair. His E is going to be restoring less health now, and his Devour, his W, is no longer going to give move speed moving towards an enemy champion. 10% less healing is a bit of a bummer, but they are kind of saying now that he is more about being a really good safety net for his teammates and saving them, rather than him being like a playmaker or a frontline by absorbing so much damage, I guess. He still does what you want a Tarm to do, right? Like protects people and stuff. He's just not as good at the other areas around that anymore. So that wraps up the notes for 8.8. Let me know what you think is going to happen with these mid-season changes. Thank you for watching the video, but for now, I will leave you with the robots.